Less than a month ago, Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez stood on a cliffside in Maui exchanging vows under the golden sunlight in what the press called the wedding of the decade. A billionaire fantasy turned real with Hollywood royalty, tech titans, and political heavyweights all gathered to witness the moment. Every detail screamed power and perfection. The flowers were flown in from across the globe, the champagne poured without pause, the music curated for maximum elegance. Jeff in a hand. Tailored tucks Lauren in a gown worth more than a mansion, both smiling as though nothing could ever crack their storybook image. But now whispers ripple through the most exclusive corridors of Hollywood and the corporate towers of Wall Street. Whispers of a secret connection between Lauren and a senior Amazon executive described by those in the know as charismatic, sharply dressed, and commanding influence at the very heart of Bezos' empire. The story they tell begins innocently enough: a visit to Amazon's Seattle headquarters meant to showcase unity and strength. But according to multiple insiders, the day started with tension, a disagreement over Lauren's use of a private jet, and the kind of spending that even in billionaire terms raises eyebrows. Witnesses recall Bezos leaving for a high-level meeting while Lauren stayed behind soon after she was seen in conversation with the executive. Their tone light at first, then more personal. Drinks were poured, laughter echoed down the corridor. Her hand brushed his arm, the kind of gesture that sparked speculation. Later, the two reportedly stepped into his glass-walled office, and according to those who claim to have seen it, the security footage shows them leaning closer until their lips met. The images now whispered about in Amazon's upper ranks show blurred faces, but unmistakable body language stills allegedly snapped from outside the office add to the intrigue. Within hours, the rumors spread through senior leadership and into the private circles of Bezos' most trusted allies. Some friends urged him to end the marriage before the story consumed his legacy. Others warned of the danger of letting perception turn into accepted truth for a man who built his empire on discipline and control. The idea of scandal erupting inside his own headquarters felt like more than betrayal. It felt like an attack on the very image he had cultivated for decades. Lauren has denied any wrongdoing, telling those close to her that the rumors are exaggerated and fueled by people who never wanted her in Bezos' life in the first place. Her defenders say she has always moved in powerful circles, and that charisma should not be mistaken for impropriety. But critics point to her past relationships with athletes, media power brokers, and of course her high-profile romance with Bezos that began while he was still married to Mackenzie Scott. To them, the alleged Seattle encounter fits a pattern. As the days pass, the couple still appears together in public, smiling for cameras. But insiders say the private atmosphere is cold, the trust cracked, and the stakes enormous. Whether Bezos walks away or stands by her, the decision will send ripples through business, politics, and media in equal measure, because this is no longer just about a marriage. It is about the intersection of love, power, image, and the price of betrayal in the rarefied world of the ultra-rich. And as the next chapter looms, the question remains, will this be remembered as nothing more than high society gossip gone too far? Or the first clear sign that Jeff Bezos' second marriage is heading toward one of the swiftest and most public collapses in billionaire history? Before the world knew them as a couple, Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez lived in completely different spheres, yet both understood the value of image and influence. Bezos, the disciplined visionary who transformed Amazon from an online bookstore into the most dominant force in e-commerce, cloud computing, and even space exploration. And Lauren, the ambitious TV personality turned helicopter pilot who navigated Hollywood's social ladder with a mix of charm, calculated presence, and the ability to be seen in all the right places. Lauren had been in the public eye for years, first as a reporter, then as a co-host on entertainment shows. Her smile and ease on camera, masking the fact that she was always thinking several moves ahead in the high-stakes game of Los Angeles celebrity culture. She dated NFL star Tony Gonzalez, with whom she had a child. She married Patrick Whitesell, one of the most powerful talent agents in Hollywood, giving her access to red carpets, exclusive parties, and the type of introductions most people only dream about. But for those who watched closely, Lauren was never content to simply be an accessory to someone else's success. She positioned herself in conversations with producers, directors, business moguls, and politicians, always expanding her network and learning where influence could be leveraged. Jeff, meanwhile, was navigating his own transformation from a tech entrepreneur in a sweater vest to a global power figure. His divorce from Mackenzie Scott was one of the most expensive and public in history, and while it played out in the media, Jeff was quietly reshaping his personal brand. The shift was visible in everything from his physique to his wardrobe to the circles he began to frequent after decades of meticulous control. He began stepping into the world of Hollywood parties, yacht gatherings, and private dinners with people far removed from the quiet offices of Seattle. For those in his orbit, the introduction of Lauren Sanchez into his life was both surprising and predictable. Surprising because she came from entertainment. Not tech predictable, because Jeff had reached the stage where personal relationships were as much about partnership and image as they were about private connection. Their romance began under circumstances that instantly attracted media fire. The National Enquirer published leaked text messages, intimate photos, and details that read like scenes from a high-budget soap opera. The revelation that Jeff had been involved with Lauren while still married to Mackenzie set off a tabloid frenzy. But while the public focused on the scandal, those close to Jeff saw something else. Lauren offered a kind of public charisma that Jeff never had. She was comfortable, in front of flashing cameras, quick with a quote, and unafraid to be the center of attention for a man who had spent his career speaking in controlled, measured tones to investors and employees. This kind of energy was intoxicating and useful together. They stepped into a different level of visibility, appearing at high-profile events from film festivals to billionaire summits. Their vacations played out on the decks of yachts in the Mediterranean, their nights at galas documented by society photographers. Yet beneath the sheen, there were moments that suggested fault lines. Lauren's taste for lavish spending wasn't unusual in her circles, but Jeff's approach to money, even with his immense wealth, was rooted in discipline and strategy. He could fund a space program on a whim, but personal extravagance that didn't serve a purpose made him uneasy. Friends recalled dinners where Lauren would talk about spontaneous shopping trips to Europe or chartering flights for weekends away, while Jeff's smile would tighten ever so slightly. Those moments passed, quickly smoothed over by laughter and public displays of affection. But in hindsight, some insiders say they hinted at the deeper incompatibilities to come. Another layer to their story was Lauren's ease with powerful men, a trait that had served her well in Hollywood. But that also raised eyebrows in Jeff's more reserved corporate world. She had a way of making people feel like they were the most important person in the room, an ability that was as much instinct as skill. And while this drew people in, it also sometimes created tension, especially in environments where hierarchy and loyalty mattered deeply, such as Amazon headquarters. Jeff's closest advisors were a tight-knit group, many of whom had been with him for decades. They were protective, not just of the company, but of Jeff himself. And the introduction of Lauren into that sphere was not universally welcomed. Some felt she was a distraction. Others feared she didn't understand the culture of precision and focus that defined Amazon. This was not Hollywood, where charm and presence could outweigh process. Here, decisions were backed by data. Meetings were timed to the minute, and every move was calculated toward long-term goals. When Lauren first visited the Seattle campus, it was as Jeff's guest during quieter times. But as their relationship progressed and her presence became more regular, some executives whispered about her influence, even if Jeff brushed it off as harmless speculation. The months leading up to their Maui wedding were a whirlwind of public appearances, luxury trips, and strategic image building for Jeff. The wedding was more than a celebration. It was a statement. The man, who had been publicly humiliated during his divorce, was now in control again, surrounded by the elite, and choosing a partner on his own terms for Lauren. It was the ultimate elevation. A marriage that cemented her status, not just in Hollywood, but in the upper echelons of global power. Their guest list reflected the blending of their worlds. Oscar winners sitting beside tech visionaries, politicians mingling with music legends and royalty. Every detail meticulously planned to project unity, opulence, and permanence. But even as the waves crashed against the Maui cliffs and photographers captured their every smile, some insiders noticed the undercurrent of tension. Jeff's preference for careful planning, clashing with Lauren's spontaneous demands. The guest who overheard a disagreement about a last-minute request to fly in a particular floral designer. The aide who noticed Jeff reviewing company reports between wedding events while Lauren entertained guests on the terrace. These moments were small but telling. After the wedding, the transition back to reality was jarring. Jeff returned to the grind of Amazon's complex global operations. Lauren continued to move in social circles that kept her in the headlines. They still traveled together, attended galas, and posted curated glimpses of their life. But behind the scenes, Jeff's advisors began to worry about the narrative spinning beyond their control. The memory of the Enquirer scandal lingered for them. It was proof that personal drama could spill into business, And when the couple planned another visit to Seattle, it was framed as an opportunity to reinforce unity, to show that Lauren could seamlessly fit into Jeff's corporate world. What no one could predict was how that visit would instead become the seed of a controversy that would eclipse even the spectacle of their Maui wedding. The wedding had barely faded from the headlines when the newlyweds boarded a jet so opulent it could have doubled as a flying palace. The destination was no secret: the French Riviera and the sun-soaked coasts of Italy, a route favored by the global elite. But this was not just a vacation. It was a calculated spectacle. Every arrival meticulously photographed, every outfit curated for the inevitable press coverage, Lauren in flowing gowns and statement jewelry, Jeff in crisp linen and designer, sunglasses together. They were the embodiment of billionaire romance. But as the cameras clicked, a different narrative was quietly taking shape for those who watched closely. The moments between the poses told a more complex story on the deck of their $485 million yacht. The Koru Lauren would lean in for the perfect shot, but seconds later turn away to check her phone a subtle distance. An undercurrent that even the warm Mediterranean breeze couldn't soften. Their honeymoon became a moving theater across Monaco, Cannes, Portofino. Every port, a stage; every dinner, a headline. Yet behind the glamour, the couple's private conversations carried the weight of more than just marital adjustments Jeff had built his life on: schedules, efficiency, control. But Lauren thrived in spontaneity, in connections that unfolded without an agenda. The yacht was fitted with every luxury imaginable, but it also became a gilded echo chamber, amplifying their differences when they weren't entertaining guests from the worlds of film, fashion, and finance. They were fielding calls from Hollywood producers and political insiders. Lauren's phone never stopped buzzing: casting rumors, hosting offers, invitations to galas and charity boards. It was the honeymoon of a couple still learning the language of each other's ambitions. In Monaco, at an exclusive dinner hosted by a European royal, Lauren was seated next to a well-known film director whose next project was rumored to be backed by Amazon Studios. The conversation sparkled with ideas but also sparked whispers among other guests. Was Lauren simply networking? Or was this the beginning of her own Hollywood chapter in Portofino? They were spotted dining with an Italian fashion dynasty family. The very next day, a luxury brand partnership for Lauren was quietly confirmed. Jeff smiled for the cameras, but those close enough to observe noticed the slight tightening of his jaw. He was used to being the center of gravity in any room, and now the attention was shifting. Their days were a carousel of helicopter rides, champagne lunches, and moonlit strolls. Yet each indulgence seemed to magnify the question. Neither voiced directly, how do you balance a marriage when both people are forces in their own right? One evening, as the yacht drifted along the Amalfi Coast, Jeff retreated to the upper deck alone, staring out at the horizon for nearly an hour when Lauren joined him. She carried 2 glasses of wine and a smile. But the moment felt more like a performance than a reconciliation still to the public. The honeymoon was a dream sequence straight from a magazine cover. But to those inside their orbit, it was the first chapter of a more intricate narrative, one where the honeymoon glow masked the early shadows of power, negotiation, and personal independence. And as the yacht sailed toward its next glittering port, so too did the whispers that would soon turn their story from a celebration into a saga. And for a while it seemed the world itself had conspired to make their first months as husband and wife the stuff of fairy tales. The beaches they walked were never crowded, the restaurants they visited always seemed to have the perfect table waiting, and the photographers who trailed them somehow caught the flattering angles that made every image look like a magazine spread. Lauren knew the power of these optics. She had built a career on crafting her own narrative, and she understood that when you married one of the richest men alive, the honeymoon wasn't just a trip. It was a global stage. Every dress, every glance, every whispered moment over dinner became part of the archive that the public would use to measure their happiness, and Jeff seemed to relish the role of adoring husband, showering her with gestures that even for him bordered on extravagant private concerts under the stars on a secluded island. A yacht trip where the crew had been flown in from 3 different countries, just to meet Lauren's exact preferences. An entire villa in Italy rented out not for privacy alone, but because the view from its balcony reminded her of a photograph she had once posted years earlier. But beneath the indulgence, there was a strange precision to the way Jeff moved through this honeymoon period. He was a man who had built an empire on data, on anticipating outcomes before they happened. And to Lauren, it was as if he was already calculating the legacy of their first year together, curating moments that could later be used to cement their status as the couple who had it all. This was the difference between love and empire. Building love might be impulsive. Messy, unpredictable empire building was deliberate. And Jeff was deliberate. In everything, even his silences on some evenings, they would sit on the deck of the yacht. The waves barely a whisper against the hull, and she would glance at him. His eyes scanning. Not the horizon, but something in his mind, a forecast. A model, a plan. And she wondered whether she was part of the plan or the reason for it. The world saw the glow, the matching smiles, the playful public moments, but Lauren began to see patterns. Moments when he would take calls late into the night. His voice, low-measured, sometimes speaking in a language she could only partly follow, the language of billion-dollar deals, venture strategies, and names she recognized from the uppermost tiers of Hollywood and politics, names that had been in the rumors. Even before their wedding, she told herself it was nothing. This was Jeff after all. His phone was as much a part of him as his ambition. But the seed had been planted, and seeds have a way of growing even in paradise. Especially in paradise, where every sunset, every perfect meal, every grand gesture only makes the smallest shadows stand out more sharply. And there was that one night on the coast of Sardinia when they had been at a dinner hosted by an old friend of Jeff's, a media tycoon with influence across Europe and the Americas, the kind of man who could call a prime minister and get an answer before the second ring. And Lauren noticed how certain conversations at the table seemed to stop when she approached, how eyes shifted subtly, how Jeff steered her away from certain topics. She had been in media long enough to know that when powerful people avoid eye contact, it's not because they don't see you. It's because they do. And later that night in their suite, as she removed her jewelry and placed it carefully in the velvet case she had brought for the trip, she caught her own reflection in the mirror, and for a fleeting moment wondered if she was looking at the heroine of the story or its cautionary tale. Still, the honeymoon rolled on from the Amalfi Coast to the Greek Isles to the Riviera. Each destination meticulously chosen, each experience so perfectly arranged, it was as if they were ticking off scenes from a movie script. One Lauren suspected Jeff had been writing in his head long before they boarded the first jet. And yet, even as she played her role to perfection, she could feel a subtle shift in the air. A soft, barely perceptible tension, like the faint tremor before an earthquake, the kind of thing you only notice if you've lived long enough in a place to know how it feels when the ground is truly still. And Lauren had lived long enough in the worlds of news and celebrity and power to know that honeymoons are never as endless as they appear. The curtain eventually comes down, and when it does, the world is no longer clapping, it is watching.
This video covers legal allegations in a news context. All claims are from official filings and no guilt is implied until proven in court. Please keep all discussions respectful. Allegations are not facts until proven in court.